Hi, and welcome to Nevaeh's Nightmare, and on this episode we will be discussing H.H. Holmes. Some believe that he is the first American serial killer, but his hotel, is also known as the Murder Castle, is truly what H.H. Holmes is remembered for. H.H. Holmes was born Herman Webster Mudgett and was born in Gilmet, New Hampshire in 1860. Herman grew up loving science and would often build elaborate scarecrows and moving toys. In 1878, he married Clara Levering, a rich woman from his town, and soon after, on September 21st, 1882, Herman enrolled in medical school at the University of Michigan. During his time attending the university, it was believed that Herman would work on cadavers every day, and he had 3 formal lectures a week on various aspects of the body. Herman would work on these bodies during said lectures. Around this time, tuition was about $100 to $200 a year, about $3,000 to $4,000 today. If Herman didn't find a way to pay the money back, he wouldn't be able to take his medical classes. And the janitor at the school, Dr. Nigel, was in charge of the cadaver holding at the school, but he would also sell and trade bodies on the side. Dr. Nigel would also accept a body even if he knew the person had been obtained in a not so legal way. Herman saw bodies as a way to make up the money he needed for school. He then began grave digging and selling the bodies. Herman had shared his secret with his lab partner, R.C. Laycock, who he had become very close to. Herman wasn't the best student, and he finished school at the bottom of his class, and even the university staff had to take a second vote on whether or not he should receive his medical degree. After barely becoming a doctor, Herman left his wife, who paid his way into college. He went to Moore's Fork in upstate New York to get engaged to another woman, but had to leave his medical career behind. It was soon found out that Herman had been married before, and he was called a liar and a cheat. And in the fall of 1885, he was extremely poor and was forced to sell his last 2 horses. Herman reached out to his dear friend Laycock, and they began grave digging once again. Herman decided to fake his own death to obtain life insurance money. Throughout 1886, Herman worked at a drugstore to pay his life insurance premiums. Herman also sent divorce papers to his ex-wife before marrying Myrta Belknap, who was aware of the scam. He then insured $20,000 on himself for his wife, but Herman's flaw in the plan was that he couldn't find a substitute corpse to replace him. Herman came up with a new plan and decided to use a fresh body instead of an already embalmed corpse. Herman's new plan was murder. Herman then lured Laycock back to a hotel, which he then killed him by giving him a massive dose of laudanum. He then put his friend's body on ice in the hotel tub. The next morning, he dropped off Laycock's body, dressed in Herman's clothes, for an insurance company to find. He then had $20,000 in his pockets. Herman found a plot of land and began building his dream home. First, he started with a drugstore and a barbershop, then he built a 2nd and 3rd floor. He called the building his castle and filled the building with the latest inventions, including gas lighting. Herman then decided to go by the name H.H. Holmes. Holmes moved into the next era of his life: business murders. Holmes' next kill was a man named Wade Warner. Holmes had managed to obtain 2 small checks that Warner had signed, and later he added 3 zeros to make the checks in the thousands. Holmes lured Warner into the basement where the kiln was kept, and he burned Warner alive. The kiln was so hot, not even the bones were left. Not only was the kiln in the basement, but Holmes also ran a massive corpse and coffin trade in the basement. Holmes is stated to have accidentally murdered another doctor, Dr. Russell, during an argument upstairs. Holmes then sold the body to a medical school, and Holmes decided that these killings were going to become his routine. After killing that man so violently, the medical schools had no use for the body, so Holmes decided to build a gas vault inside on the top floor. Holmes used chloroform to subdue and kill his victims. He would get the chloroform in extremely large amounts, up to 5 times a week, from the drugstore on the 1st floor. Holmes continued to build his castle larger and larger and larger under different aliases. His hotel was built for the perfect movement of bodies. He added 5 shops and a post office to the 1st floor and rented out the bedrooms on the 2nd level. Holmes had trap doors and rooms no one could enter through that allowed him to drag the bodies to doors that dropped into the basement. Through 1892, H.H. Holmes was running a full operation of murder, corpse prep, and body sales. Lots of women flocked to Holmes because he was very handsome and charming, but at the times, Holmes had a wife named Murda and their baby, and they were seen as a happy family, and he loved his wife and adored their babies, and were living in a castle. Holmes hired lots of women to work in the shops below and strongly believed in women's right to work, but it was just another way to receive more victims. The World's Fair came to town, and Holmes saw this as an opportunity to allow guests into more rooms. But Holmes saw an even bigger money earn when finding a new typist named Minnie Williams, who had $50,000 worth of land in North Texas. But she had a sister who could claim the family land. And on the 4th of July in 1893, Holmes picked up Minnie's sister and took her to the castle, where he shoved her into the gas vault. But Holmes fell in love with Minnie and was stated to have regretted killing her and her sister. In 1892, the Chicago police set up an investigation for all the missing persons reports that had been piling up over the past 3 years. Holmes had kept some of the bodies as trophies, and in November of 1893, police had approached Holmes about the money frauds and saw packages containing human body parts being sold. Holmes convinced them it was nothing, and immediately after they left, he burned the packages. Holmes, being scared of the police closing in on his body factory, he set the castle on fire, and on New Year's Day, he fled to New York City. Holmes planned his final murders, his fantasy, killing an entire family. It started with Benjamin Peitzel and one of his business partners, then one of his sons and 2 daughters. The insurance company over the family became suspicious and hired a private investigator, and the police arrested Holmes in Boston, but was not aware of any of his murders. He was charged with insurance fraud, and Holmes became a celebrity for his corpse insurance scam while he wrote a book in jail. The private investigator, however, discovered letters that Holmes had kept that Peitzel's daughters had written while Holmes had them in his custody. The letters had revealed where the daughters had last been and where their bodies had been buried, along with multiple body parts from other people. With further investigation, police found more and more bodies. Holmes was put on trial and sentenced to death. Chicago News believed that he had killed over 200 people, but Holmes was convicted of first-degree murder and died by hanging on May 7, 1896. In courtroom, he confessed to 27 murders, but later claimed to have killed over 130. Holmes was hung for the murder of Benjamin Peitzel. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I personally have been wanting to talk about this case for a while, but let me know what you guys think. Did he really kill almost 200 people, or was he just suspected of a few?